For this video, I want to introduce you to the three main freehand drawing tools that can be found in Adobe Illustrator. These tools allow us to either quickly or precisely lay down vector artwork one point at a time. The three main drawing tools that we're going to use are the pen tool, there's also the pencil tool, and then there's the brush tool or the Paintbrush tool. Each one of these works a little bit differently, but they both come in handy depending on the scenario that you need to work in and the type of artwork that you're creating. I'm going to start off with the pen tool first. Notice that there are a variety of different kinds of pen tools. There's the regular pen tool, and this is the one that I'll use most often. But there's some other related pen tools that let you add or delete anchor points and even convert anchor points from a curved to a straight line. There's also a newer type of pen tool called the curvature tool. To be honest, I don't use this one as much simply because it gives me the least amount of control. So for all of my tutorials, I'm not going to be using this one. If I tend to use the pen tool, it's going to be the regular pen tool. Notice that the keyboard shortcut for this is the letter P on your keyboard. Whenever you select this tool, pay close attention to what your fill and stroke colors are. For now, I'm going to keep my fill color set to none and my stroke set to just a solid black. From up here, you can select the size of the line that you're creating, usually measured in points. You can also type in or dial in exactly what you need from here. And also, you can set the line profile. Later on, you can change it to a different kind of brush style, change the opacity or any other styles as well. But for now, I'm going to keep it as the default. Now, if you're using the pen tool is meant for precise control. This means you can click once and you can see it'll start to add on a line. Now, all I did was click. I'm not clicking and dragging. And as long as I click, every time I click, it'll create a new anchor point and give me a straight line back to the previous anchor point, all the way until I go back to the beginning. And then you can see it snaps to that point. And there's also a little circle at the bottom right-hand corner of my cursor. When I click there, that will close it off. Now you can see all of the individual vector points that are here. And if I need to make an edit to this object, I can always use my selection tools. Either the black arrow will let me click and drag it around or resize it, or the white arrow will allow me to click on individual anchor points and move those around too. Whenever you use the pen tool, if you need to create a curved line, you start off with a point and you can click and drag, and these will give you what are called Bezier handles. These handles will allow you to control the curvature of whatever line that you have. Notice that you have two of them, one on the left and one on the right, and so each one controls different kinds of curvature. If you just click once like I did there, you can see it goes back to a regular point, and then you'll have to click and drag again if you want to create another point with other artwork. There's some other little tips and tricks that you can do with these curves. For instance, if I was to click and drag, and then let's say I don't want to have another curved point. Let's say I want to go straight down from here. If I click on that point again, you can see it converts it back to a regular point, and then I can go straight down along with those. Another good keyboard shortcut to know is if I click and drag, and I want to be able to control the curvature of a line, I can hold down my Option key. This turns it into my Convert Anchor Point key, and now I can click and be able to drag any one anchor point or Bezier handle so that I can control that vector point as well. So all that can be done using just your pen tool. I'll delete this away. A final tip for creating curves using just the pen tool is if you draw a straight line, then go back and hold down the Option key and click on the line itself. Notice that this turns into my little curvature or bending line. Now I can click on the line and actually drag on it. This is a great tip to come in handy if you've already got the artwork drawn off. And you can do this to any kind of artwork. So if I hold down Option and click on this line, it'll quickly and easily allow me to draw off or curve that line as well. If I need to turn it into a straight point, hold down the Option key and click on the anchor point, and it will automatically get rid of those Bezier curves. All of that can be done using the pen tool. It does take a little bit of practice, but with that practice, you can be able to add and create precise artwork. Now, related to the pen tool, we'll get rid of all of our artwork, is the pencil tool. The pencil tool is located underneath the shaper tool, and just like the pen tool, it's got a variety of other tools that work well with it. The keyboard shortcut for this one is N, so think of it as pencil. And with it selected, it allows you to freehand and freeform draw lines. So whenever I click and drag, this will give me an initial tracing line that follows the movement of my cursor, and when I let go, it automatically creates the line for me. Notice that I've got the vector anchor points automatically added to here, and that was generated by what the computer thought would be the best position and also Bezier line for the line that I drew. Now, as with any other one, I can use my selection tool. I can still click on the line and move it around. I can change the size of the stroke. Anything I need to do with it, I can even use my white arrow and be able to click on an anchor point and change up the curvature of a line. So you can see how vector artwork is very, very forgiving and very, very flexible. Now, along with the pencil tool are all of these other tools that help you manipulate and otherwise modify your artwork. If I was to use the pencil tool and just very quickly, tell you what, let's back up, draw off something like this. So I've got a good little line going across, but let's say I wanted to smooth that out a little bit more. Using the smooth tool, this will allow me to click over an area and draw off on top of the line and smooth it out the direction that I want it to go. You can see how it's getting rid of most of my anchor points, and in general is going to smooth out the line that I have. So that's what the smooth tool will allow you to do. If you're drawing any kind of drawing and you need to be able to smooth out the line, that tool is what comes in handy. The path eraser tool allows you to erase away whatever selected path that you have, and so this is a quick and easy way of breaking things up. Notice, however, when I do this, the path has to be selected, and so when I erase it away and it starts to break off, these become deselected and I can't do anything with them. If you ever want to quickly select something, hold down the Command key. That'll bring up your selection tool. Then you can select that area, and when you let go of the Command key, it goes back to your original or your last tool that you had. So if I wanted to select this, hold down Command, let go of Command, and that allows me to quickly and easily erase it away. If I was to get rid of that, we can delete it. Also with my pen tool, if I start to draw a line and I stop and I draw a line again, if I need to be able to join up those two lines, here's where the join tool comes in handy. With join, I can select both of the lines and I can click and drag over them and automatically join them together. From there, I can then use my smooth tool. I can smooth out that selection to make sure it's selected. That will give me a good smooth join between those two particular lines. So that comes in handy if you ever need to make edits or corrections to your pencil tool by itself. Going back to the pencil tool, there are some options to know when working with this tool. To access the tool options, really for any tool, all you have to do is double click on the tool icon, and this will open up the options for the pencil tool. The first thing to notice is the fidelity of the tool. All fidelity means is how accurate do you want the tracing that you draw off to be replicated to the final line. The more accurate that it is, if I set it to all the way 100% accurate, whenever I use my tool to draw off a line, if I have something that's very detailed and I draw it such as this will try to pick up on every single nuance and nook and cranny of that line. However, if I was to open up the options and set it all the way to smooth and try to draw the same type of line, this is going to take my line and smooth out a lot of those bumps. That doesn't mean all the bumps won't be there, but it will significantly reduce the amount of bumps that you have. So if you want to draw artwork that's very smooth and almost cartoonishly friendly, then you want to have your settings set to be very, very smooth. But if you're trying to draw artwork that's very accurate and highly detailed, you'll want to keep the accuracy as high on that end for that one. For me, depending on the artwork that I have, I usually do somewhere in between, and it's not a bad idea just to keep it in the middle if you don't know what to do. The next set of options deals with how you want the line to behave once you create your stroke. If you want it to automatically fill in with the fill color, you can have this turned on, and instead of it drawing just a line by default, if you have a fill color set, now when you draw, it'll automatically fill it in with whatever fill color that you have as well. This comes in handy if you're trying to draw off solid shapes, so make sure it's turned on rather than just having it turned off. Otherwise, when you do that, it's automatically just going to give you a blank line that you have here. Let's delete away what we have. We'll open up the options again by double-clicking on it carefully. Now, keeping your object selected comes in handy if you want to make edits to that object as soon as you draw it. Sometimes you don't want to make edits, you just want to freehand draw, and so unchecking that will allow you to quickly make the marks without actually making any edits or changes to that. So depending on how you're working, sometimes it's better to turn it off or to turn it on. You can also have the Option key automatically toggle to the Smooth key, Smooth tool. This means when you hold down the Option and once you draw your line, you can quickly and easily smooth that out. For me, I rarely use this one, so it's very rare that I have to actually turn it on. These last two options actually come in very handy. Closing the path when they're close to within a certain set of pixels, and editing the path when it's within a certain set of pixels may be something that you want to have turned on or off. Here's what these do. Whenever I create a line, let's see, I'm going to select my line, we'll set it back to have no stroke, or excuse me, no fill and a black stroke. I'll make it thick enough so that we can see it. Whenever I draw a line and I return back to my starting point, if the starting point doesn't get close enough, you can see how it will not connect those two together. However, if I was to draw it and get real close to the beginning point, you can see how it becomes a solid circle. The cursor changes, and when I let go, it automatically joins it back together. And so this will allow me to draw off objects and quickly and easily close them in depending on the amount of pixels or how close I get to it based on pixels. Otherwise, if it's too far apart, it's always going to keep those separated that way. The other option allows you to continue drawing with a path. If I draw the path and that path is selected, if I'm too far away and start drawing another one, it's simply going to draw off another path as well. But if I get my cursor closer to it, you can see how it changes the cursor to a little line, and this will allow me to continue drawing on that said path. Now this only happens if the path is selected. So if I tried to start drawing on one of these other paths, it's just going to give me a separate or a different line. And so this is one other reason why you may want to have your line to be kept selected if you want to keep on drawing and creating that artwork all the way around, connecting it, so it goes back to here. Now with any line art that you create, you can do more than just change the width and color of the line. You can also change its profile. By default, the profile is just a uniform thickness in width. And so if I make it larger or smaller based on the stroke, it'll always remain uniformly thick or thin. Now if I change the profile, I can give it a tapered edge, or I can give it this kind of profile, or I can even give it this kind of profile. And so this comes in handy whenever you want to give your artwork or your lines a unique kind of artistic flair. Let's see, I'll back out and draw a couple of lines. And as I draw them, I can select all of them now, make them larger or smaller, and then change their profile to look something like this. In addition to profiles, you can also apply a variety of different brush styles with those as well, but we'll get into that in just a second. The last thing I'll say about creating lines is make sure you understand what you can do from the stroke panel as well. The stroke panel gives you all the same options, but it also allows you to change your end cap, your corners that you have, and even how the stroke is aligned, and if you needed to make or create a dashed line. From here you can add arrowheads and also change up your profile along with this. Having that stroke panel is one of the panels that I recommend having open. But for general drawing, usually I don't refer to it as much. Everything I need to do can be done up here. The final freeform drawing tool that we'll work with is the Paintbrush tool. Now the Paintbrush tool works just like the pencil tool in that it allows you to click and drag, and it'll give you a preview of what your line should look like. And when you let go, this will give you your vector line that's automatically created. And as with the other vector lines, you can use your selection tools to move it around, to click on it, and even change up the position of each of the anchor points and change it at will. Let me demonstrate really quickly the difference between the Paintbrush tool and the Blob Brush tool. With the Blob Brush, when I click and drag, it looks similar, looks very much the same. However, when I let go and I select my artwork, notice that it's not a solid line. Instead, it's an actual solid filled in shape. You can even tell by the fill color that's up here. The Blob Brush allows you to quickly and easily fill in large areas with a filled object, whereas the Paintbrush tool allows you to create lines, and those lines can then be changed up depending on the stroke that you have. For this particular video, I'm primarily going to be talking about the paintbrush and all of its effects. Now with the paintbrush, it is a little bit different. There is a palette that you can have open, and within this palette, these are all of the different styles that you can apply to a brush that you have. All of these styles can also be found up here at the very top. There are 5 different kinds of brushes that you can create. You can do calligraphic brushes, scatter brushes, art, bristle, and pattern brushes, and each one of those creates a different kind of look and feel. Now notice that I've got a 1-point stroke, and if I was to draw a line, it will give me a uniform line with just a solid 1-point stroke. If I was to have that line selected, I can click on any one of these brushes and automatically apply that brush style to it. In this case, I'm adding a 5-point rounded calligraphic brush, or I can swap over and change out the look and feel of that. Or I can use one of these textured art brushes and apply that to that style. The advantage of using a paintbrush is that you can draw off a line and have that artwork follow the shape of the line. So regardless, whatever I draw off or create, it's going to take that artwork and create a brush style useful for that. Now if I select any of these lines, I can always go back and turn them into a basic line, or I can apply any other style of graphic to that. Some of these brushes do different things depending on the style of brush that you have. So let's look at some of those. If you want to find more brushes, open up your Brushes panel, and then at the very bottom you can see there's a Brush Libraries menu. There's different kinds of brushes that we can add on to these depending on what we're doing. I'm going to go to the artistic ones, and let's open up some of these calligraphic brushes. So calligraphic brushes add a tip, and when I click on them you can see it adds to my Brushes panel. They add a tip that's flat and rounded and allows you to draw off artwork in a calligraphic style or a calligraphic way. Notice that when I use this, it's a very thick line, but when I select that line, check out the thickness of it in strokes. This is a 1-point line, but the brush itself was 40 points wide. Keep that in mind whenever you use brushes. Brushes have their own individual and separate measurement system set apart from the stroke. Now if I was to make it larger, or smaller, it will change the size of it based on the brush that I have. So if I have a 1/2-point stroke, that means it's like working with a 20-point flat calligraphic brush. So think of this not as points, but also percentages. If I set it to 2 points, it's going to be twice as large. In general, I usually keep my brush size set to 1 point. Some of these will allow you to change up the profile, but in this case, the calligraphic brushes won't allow you to change it to any of the other profiles for now. Some of these other brushes that allow you to stretch out an artwork like this charcoal kind of work are known as art brushes. If I was to open up some of these, I'll go to artistic. Let's open up, say, the chalk and pencil brushes. With these, you can take any kind of vector artwork that you've created, and with that brush selected, when you paint, it'll automatically add that style to your design. Any kind of artwork that you have can be turned into a vector art, and it doesn't have to be a texture kind of vector. Some other kind of artistic brushes that they have can mimic, let's see, here's some that mimic watercolor. And so with these watercolor ones, I can change the color of my stroke, and be able to add watercolor type effects, and other ones have more decorative kind of effects. Let's see if I can get one that's more, so here's a set of banners. If I wanted to draw off a banner, I can select one of these and click and drag, and it will automatically set the position of the banner based on the artwork that I'm drawing off and creating. Some of these are more useful than others, but you can play around and create a lot of different kinds of artistic banners and artistic brushes depending on what you want to create and how you want to use those. Another kind of brush that you can use are called scatter brushes. Let's see if I can find some good scatter brushes. Under the decorative tab, here's some decorative scatter ones. These scatter brushes allow you to take artwork and have them scatter along the path that you're creating. So let's say I wanted to quickly and easily fill in something that has bubbles. Well, I can take the bubbles artwork, and you can see how it will copy a version of those bubbles and have it follow along the path that I have. Again, because it's vector, I can quickly and easily select these lines, move things around, even make changes to the path as needed, and the artwork will automatically update. And so scatter brushes come in handy for being able to quickly and easily scatter about artwork and have it follow along that path. Another great set of brushes to play around with are your bristle brushes. Now, all of your bristle brushes can be found under the Bristle Brush library. And these, like in Photoshop, try to mimic a variety of different traditional media. And each one has its own look and feel and way of interacting with the artwork. For instance, if I wanted to do a fan brush with this fan selected, I've got red set up, you can see how it will change the shape based on the direction that I'm painting, almost as if I was painting with a fan brush. The best part about it is you can use this to quickly and meticulously build up different layers of color. If I was to choose another one like this blunt brush, oops, make sure it's selected, there we go. This gives me a smaller area to be able to paint with, or if I wanted to use a more denser brush, this will give us this kind of effect as well. So if you're trying to create vector artwork that has a little bit more of a natural or traditional style and feel of work, using these bristle brushes tend to come in handy. Working with bristle brushes, however, it does tend to be very memory intensive. So if you do use these kind of brushes, try to use them either sparingly or make sure you have enough memory that it doesn't bog down your computer system. Finally, there are pattern brushes. Pattern brushes allow you to repeat a pattern over and over again depending on the kind of style that you want. And these can also be created from any kind of vector artwork that you have. In this case, if I was to choose a pattern and click and drag, you can see how it repeats it and also bends with the curve of the artwork that I have. If I was to choose another pattern, I can draw it off. Sometimes these patterns work better than others. It depends on how the pattern is set up and how it deals with corners and edges. But for the most part, this comes in handy when creating a variety of different edges, or if you need to create something that repeats over and over again. In the newer version of Illustrator, they also allow you to have actual images or rasterized artwork. So for this case, I've got a pattern brush that allows me to add little stitching along the edges. Or if I wanted one that has kind of a telephone cord, I can use that to repeat and go over and over again. And all it's doing is repeating that line. So if I was to draw a short line or a longer line, all it's doing is repeating that same segment, and it's doing so in kind of a way that's seamless and you can't tell where one part starts and one part ends. These do come in handy and they're very fun, but very often I don't use them as much unless there's a special purpose for these kinds of brushes. The final thing I'll say about brushes is that they have many of the same options that the pencil tool does. If you double click on it, this will open it up, and you can see there's a fidelity going from accurate to smooth, and you should also be able to fill in strokes, keep them selected, and also edit paths within a certain set amount of pixels as well.